Recognition, power, and influence is your birthright, and this podcast shows you how to get there. Welcome to episode number 243. Today's episode, I am sharing with you some of the tools that I have learned through working with my clients as they rise the ranks of leadership. So we know that what got you here won't get you there, but we can begin to implement some of the skills and tools that will take you to that next level even before we get there. So then that way, once we do understand the strategy and we put the pieces in place, when we advance into those higher levels of leadership, we have more success. We've actually created a job that we really want to be in for the long term. Okay, let's get started.
Welcome to Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I teach you how to get promoted, get paid, and bring your whole self to the leadership table. I am on a mission to change organizations from the C-suite out because women are the new face of leadership, and we are doing it on our terms.
Hello, corporate badasses. Welcome to another episode of Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and super excited, as always, to be here with you again this week. So, buzz for women leaders is in the air. I was watching the Democratic National Convention and had tears coming down my eyes onto my entire body several times throughout the conversations. I keep watching the clips online. And the biggest thing I want to say about it is how important it is to surround ourselves with inspiring women who get it, who get the work that we need to do as women to get ourselves into higher level leadership positions, who admire that work, who support that work, and rally behind that work. And even if it's just a reminder to me and myself about how important it is to continue going, to continue stepping into the magic, to continue helping support more and more women to not only get the recognition that they deserve, but to have success. And I want that success for you. I want you to feel that level of support. So yeah, I am in awe, and I am so excited about what is to come in the next couple of months in the United States. Pretty cool. So here we are with another episode that still occurs as part of the Summer of Magic. Summer is not over yet, actually well into September. I still have more Summer of Magic LinkedIn Live interviews. I'm going to be bringing some women onto this podcast to celebrate their magical promotions over the years. And I want you to continue celebrating as well. This is the perfect time for all of your hard work to pay off. And if it means raising your hand, asking for more, setting yourself up for a promotion that's going to come at the end of the year, whatever that might be, I encourage you to say yes to it, and also to celebrate with me at hashtag Summer of Magic 2024 so that we can celebrate you or your colleagues' promotions as all part of our amazing celebration of 432 corporate badass women getting promoted during the summer of 2024, even while we are on vacation. I'm so thrilled. Today's episode came out of a conversation I was having with my husband. My husband is my thought partner in all things business. And what I love, there are a lot of things I love about my conversations with him, but one of them is that he thinks very differently, and we bring two different sides of the conversation to the table. But when we were having this particular conversation, we started piggybacking off of each other and really realizing the importance of the information that I'm going to share with you in today's conversation. So you have heard the term, what got you here won't get you there. And I think for a lot of people, what that really comes down to is moving from a subject matter expert into a higher level executive leader. And then the question becomes, how do we do that? And that's what I obviously talk about on our podcast. But first is the realization that as you continue to grow your career, there are ways that your job description begins to change and evolve. And I think for a lot of people, they look at a career journey as just being additive. So you just add more responsibility, you add more team members. Maybe you have the ability to delegate by proxy because you have people actually working for you. Maybe you're able to influence by proxy because you're actually included in the board meetings. But it's important to realize what you're actually doing and to do it on purpose rather than just having it happen and happenstance. The other thing that's really great is that you can also do it ahead of time. So, my flagship program that I created back in 2021 was called Executive Ahead of Time. And in this program, actually it was 2020. I can't believe I created that program in 2020. It launched in 2020, and that program was meant to give you the skills to begin to become the executive, to have that influence and power ahead of time. And while we're doing that, we have to really acknowledge and know the process that we're doing. So step number 1 of my executive promotion process is getting out of the weeds. We really need to be able to speak to the strategic vision. And I think a lot of people confuse getting out of the weeds with time management, but I see it quite differently. Yes, time management is a component. It's how we're spending our days. Are we spending our days putting out fires, working as the technical subject matter expert, or are we able to pull up, have that higher 30,000-foot view and delegate appropriately? So that is a component of it. But really, we could do all of that brilliantly and not communicate it to anyone. And if we don't communicate to people our 30,000-foot view, why the work that we're doing matters, then they just see us as a scaled subject matter expert. And I have had clients come to me at the vice president, senior vice president level whose jobs are really, 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 really far into the weeds. So this becomes your work, and I'm just going to put some titles on it for now. But like I said, you can be a high-level executive and still be really far into the weeds. And I don't say that as a good thing at all. Like if you feel like you're not being recognized and don't actually have influence, it's still because you're so far into the weeds. So I'm just going to put some words to this, but up until let's say senior manager, director level, being in the weeds is not necessarily a problem. It is part of your job. And in this particular instance, what I call it is change your communication by say 5%. So if you can have more visionary conversations with your boss, with executive leadership 5% of the time, rather than just talking about what you're working on and how you're doing it, you're already winning, especially at those levels. Once you start to get towards senior director and VP level and above, it's important to really start letting go of some of the technical aspects of your job and really elevating your entire role, pulling your entire role out of the weeds. Huge part of the process. And actually, ironically, is not what this podcast episode is about. But it's important for you to see that that is the work. That is the work to get you to those higher levels of leadership. If you want to be involved in the conversation, if you want to actually have that recognition and influence, you need to know how to communicate at that 30,000 feet. You need to know why the work that your team is working on matters to the organization as a whole and how to communicate that. You need to automatically default to not how you're getting something done, but why you're getting something done. Once you get into those higher levels of leadership, you're going to start to hear that leaders speak this way much more so than at those lower levels of leadership. And you need to start adapting that type of communication style. So that's part of the process. And then the conversation that I was having with my husband, because we were talking about a colleague of his who was having difficulty with this next level of leadership. So once you really understand that you can't manage all of the technical aspects of your job or even want to communicate about all of the how you're doing something, it's important for you to realize what to do next. Now, at the vice president and senior vice president level, one of the challenges and one of the weedsy type conversations that I'm often having with my clients is around people management. And especially, of course, early on when you become a senior manager and let's say you've never managed people before, you might be freaking out all the time. You're trying to figure out how to manage people. So you are an excellent technical expert, but you need to get feedback from your boss. maybe you're actually really great at managing people, and so you talk about it a lot, or you get really great feedback. And I think at those levels, at senior manager, director, even senior director, having conversations, having your day-to-day job be about people management is okay. It works out okay. This is sort of what's going on for you. It makes a lot of sense. Now, the challenge is as you start to scale into vice president and senior vice president roles, or let's say you would like to appear as the executive ahead of time, and you want to start changing your communication habits ahead of time, which I highly, highly recommend, you're going to want to stop talking about the people. You're going to want to stop communicating about either your successes or your challenges with your people. And this is really hard for a lot of people to do because that's a huge part of your job. But if we start to look at it as like shifting our communication by, let's say, 10%. So day to day, your job is really focused on getting that difficult employee to actually deliver on time, or maybe stakeholders to come through on their promises. Or perhaps, like I have a client right now who her employee engagement numbers on her company-wide survey are through the roof, like excellent, amazing. And what she could do by default is just feel proud of herself, be like, yeah, that's great. You know, my team really likes me. And granted, I want to tell you, for any client that I have whose team really likes them, they push their buttons. I don't have a single client that doesn't challenge their team, and then their team actually respects them as a result of it. So when I say likes them, I mean that in a really powerful way, and I'm not meant to diminish this in any way whatsoever. These women are getting shit done. So this is like a really, really big deal. So now we get to this point and we start to realize that in our conversations, though, if we're consistently talking just about our people or even how great we are with our people, and let's say you go into a job interview and you want to lead with that and you lead with that as your top strength, one of the challenges is at the senior vice president and C-suite level, you need to get above the people. So step number one, as you continue to scale and grow your careers, to get out of the weeds. Step number two is to get out of the people. So what does that look like in practicality? If you're going to change your communication, right? So let's say nothing changes about your week, your day-to-day, you're still very much managing people, but yet you want to shift your communication a little bit. What you're going to start to do is shift your communication in a strategic way. So you want to show at the higher levels of executive leadership that not only are you great at managing people, but you're great at strategically managing people. So how you're building out your team, ways that you're making tough decisions with your team, ways that you're holding your team accountable. If you have a challenge with your team, you're presenting it to your boss in a way like, here are some things that I'm trying, right? What do you recommend? So everything is being presented very strategically. You're talking about your thought process. You're communicating your thought process. If my client who had the really high employee engagement scores wanted to share that information with anybody else at her organization, she would talk about the purposeful strategy that she put into place to actually create those higher levels of employee engagement, right? So you're wanting to make sure that you elevate the conversation above the people. When you start to do that, then people really recognize you as part of their team, right? Like I'm talking about the C-suite team, the CEO, the other C-suite executives, the other higher level vice presidents at your organization. They start to see you as that strategic thought leader, that person who's able to make really tough decisions, that person who is able to get the work done, but doesn't actually talk about the work all the time. You can talk about the strategy behind the work all the time, but not the actual work itself. So what this episode is meant to do for you is to start to bring awareness to your situation. And I really want you to begin to ask yourself if you're having trouble really getting that recognition and influence or feeling like you're unsupported by the executive team and that you don't really have that seat at the table, I encourage you to elevate the conversation around your people. Stop relying on your amazing people skills or lack of amazing people skills as being the go-to when you're having conversations with executive leadership. Instead, talk about the strategy behind how you're building out your group or how you're working with employee engagement. Now, once you start to do that, then you also have to be willing to actually pull yourself emotionally away from your team. So when I talk about getting out of the weeds is not necessarily about time management. That's a lot in the beginning, right? So at some point, you are going to have to transition your role so that you aren't bogged down by the details, so that you do have time to carve out to think strategically. And if you're not actually doing that, let's say you're caught up in the day-to-day of all the fires that your team and you don't have good boundaries and good processes for communication set up with your team, then you are technically speaking too much into the people. Like that is, it's requiring too much of your time. And if you want to continue advancing, you're going to need to find ways to emotionally distance and pull yourself away from your team so that you can continue to think strategically. And now what you're doing is you're really elevating yourself above the people. Now, here is the lovely surprise that I would like to add to this conversation with each of you, is that as you continue to do this, you're going to notice that there's a different type of people that creep up into your life. So this conversation about getting out of the people was getting out of your team. Every executive, so I have women that I work with that are in the C-suite, women who are in, those higher levels of vice president levels, and every single one of them is constantly dealing with the people of their C-suite, the people of their CEO, the people of their board. So the actual people that you're spending your emotional energy, your time, your strategic thinking around starts to become those higher levels of people that you need to influence in order to get your job done, in order to have that recognition, in order to continue to have that voice at the table. And so while you do continue to manage people, you're very much managing up, you're managing sideways, you're managing all of those higher level, oh my gosh, it seems like we're talking about kindergarten behavior so much, especially in the C-suite. And there's a lot of different personalities. A lot of those personalities are incredibly strong and incredibly vocal. But the more time that you can spend thinking about them and what they need to hear from you in order to influence them, one, to get your job done, but also to be recognized yourself so that they know who you are, so that they know the value that you bring. So for all of my higher level clients, every single coaching conversation is around how to manage their bosses, how to manage certain people at those really high levels of leadership who just are acting cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I'm telling you, it's going to keep happening. But the good news about that is that sets you apart. When you are able to pull yourself out of your own people and then really elevate into thinking about those higher levels of leadership and how you can begin influencing behavior at the top, now that is your ticket. That's your ticket to freedom. Learning those skills is what blasts you off for the rest of your career, right? Now you have no ceiling. Now you're not bogged down by the weeds. You're not bogged down by the people. You are simply trying to have conversations and network and build relationships at a super high level. When you can do that, now you really have that decision-making capability. You are truly powerful at your organization. You can begin to lift people up the elevator with you. This is the freedom that all of us want as women in leadership, and you have to elevate yourself out of that team leadership, that people leadership, and really start to think bigger about how can I begin to influence at the top. Spend your energy there, and it will reap rewards over and over and over again. All right, Let me know what stood out in today's episode. I'd love to hear from you. Is this resonating with you? I'm still unpacking this concept itself, but I think it's absolutely imperative that we start thinking about this and we begin to think about what is going to get us to that next level of leadership. And this is just one of the ways, but it's a very big and important way that we can begin to advance our careers this week. All right. Thank you all so much for listening. I'll see you again soon. Bye. Before you go, I have a question for you. Do you know how close you are to your next promotion? Really? Not what your boss has told you, not what you even believe to be true, but have you actually taken the time to sit down, take an assessment, review the 5 categories that it takes to get promoted into senior executive leadership positions and decided where you fall in each category and given yourself a ranking on a scale of 1 to 10 of how close you are to getting your next promotion? Have you done this? Well, now's your chance. If that feels interesting to you and you're like, hey, I want to know exactly how close I might actually be or how far away you might be and what it's going to take to get you even closer, then I invite you to take my promotability quiz. This is a quiz that I put together with practical tips that actually tell you where you're lacking and where you're winning. What are the areas that you actually need to improve and not necessarily what your boss is telling you all the time so that you can take concrete steps towards landing that next promotion and changing the face of the leadership table. Go to yourpromotabilityscore.com to take your free assessment today.